We are today on the Pei Beis Amud Beis in the Mishnah. Sagt the Mishnah, Kama hu shiyuroi, what's the shear that you need for Erev Tchumen? Mazen shtei sudas l'chol echad ve'echad. You have to have enough for 2 sudas for every person that's participating in the Erev Chatzeris. Meaning it's not enough to have 2 sudas for everybody, but every person that's participating, there has to be enough for 2 sudas for him. And the reason why 2 sudas is because that's the usual amount of food that a person eats in a day. 2 sudas. So if you put over there 2 sudas, that shows that you're establishing your shvisa in that place. Mizaynai l'chayl. And we're talking about a amount of food that a person eats in the weekday. V'loy l'Shabbos. Not the amount of food that a person eats on Shabbos. Divrei Rab Meir. That's what Rab Meir says. Rab Yehuda Omer l'Shabbos. 2 sudas, what a person eats on Shabbos, v'loy l'chayl, and not what a person eats on the weekday. Now the Mishnah explains that they're not really arguing. V'zeh v'zeh miskavnim l'hakol. Both of them are saying a kula, meaning Rab Meir says that a person eats less during the week, so therefore he gives the shear of 2 sudas of the week. Rab Yehuda says a person eats less on Shabbos. Right, what's the chiluk between them? As Rashi explains, we'll see in the Gemara that on Shabbos there are more foods available. Basim tafshila, there's more geshmak foods available. So therefore Rab Meir says a person eats more on Shabbos, he has more geshmak foods. Rab Yehuda says the opposite. On Shabbos you have to eat 3 sudas, so a person eats less on Shabbos. So they're both saying the shear of 2 sudas of what is less, whether Shabbos or Chayil. Sagt the Mishnah weiter, what's the shear of the 2 sudas? Rabbi Yechanan and Breike and Rab Shimon here are going to say a different shear. Taisvus here says that the shear of Rabbi Yechanan and Breike and Rab Shimon does not fit not with Rab Meir and Rab Yehuda. So what's their shear? Rabbi Yechanan and Breike Omer mikikar bepunyan, or another gear, the Marshal says you go this kikar. Kikar bepunyan, you buy a kikar that's worth of a punyan. And what kind of kikar is this? Midalit soen besela. When you can buy for 4, you can buy for a sela, you can buy 4 saw of flour. Okay, so let's make the cheshbon over here. How much would come out to be 2 sudas? So how many pundyainin are there in a sela? So Rashi here says there are 48 pundyainin in a sela. Okay, got that? Now let's convert sa'in into kavin. How many kav is there in a saw? Every saw is 6 kav. Okay? It's going to be negated to the hemshech of the Gemara. The Gemara is going to explain everything in kav. So every saw is 6 kav. So if you have 4 saw, how much do you have that you can buy for a sela? That's 24 kav. 24 kav in a sela. Which would mean, if you divide that in half, so you have 48 half a kav. 48 half a kav in a sela. So a punyan, which is a 48th of a sela, will buy you a half a kav. A punyan is a half a kav of that's how much that's the size of this kikar. Half a kav. Okay, clear? So that's Rabbi Yechanan ben Breike. Rab Shimon Omer, a half a kav is 2 sudas. So 1 suda will be a quarter of a kav. One suda is a half of that, a quarter of a kav.
How many pieces, the loaf of bread, how many pieces are you dividing it?
So for the Erev Chatzeris, you have to have a whole bread. We're talking about a whole kikar. The kikar has to be a whole kikar. But that whole kikar, according to Rabbi Yechanan ben Breike, is a half kav. And a half a kav is 2 sudas. 1 suda will be a quarter of a kav. Rab Shimon says, Shtei yodes lekikar. You only need 2/3 of a kikar, mishalosh lekav. Now, how large is your kikar? The kikar is 1/3 of a kav. 3 kikar is a full kav. So 1/3 of a kikar, 1/3 of a kav that is, 1/3 of a kav is a kikar, and 2/3 of that is 2 sudas. So 2/3 of 1/3 of a kav is going to be 2 sudas. So what does that mean? 1/3 of 1/3 of a kav is going to be 1 suda. How much is 1/3 of 1/3 of a kav? A 1/9 of a kav. 1/3 of 1/3 is a 1/9. So a 1/9 of a kav is going to be 1 suda. So if you're halting cheshbon over here, the difference.
1/3 of a kav and needs a quarter of a kav.
No, the difference 1 suda. No, 1 suda according to Rabbi Yechanan ben Breike was a quarter of a kav.
Right.
And according to Rab Shimon, 1 suda is a ninth of a kav. A ninth of a kav. Yeah. A third, 2/3 of a third of a kav is 2 sudas. 1/3 of a third of a kav, which is a ninth of a kav, is 1 suda. So there's a very big difference between them, l'chayra. The Gemara is soon going to explain that not, but the pashtus there's a huge difference between them. Okay, that's the machlokes here. Now the Mishnah says weiter, chetzia, half of a kikar, lebayis hamenuga. This is the halacha by when you enter into a house which has a nega in it. So the halacha is the person himself becomes tamei right away. But the clothing that he's wearing don't become tamei unless he stay there to be able to eat 1 suda. How long is it to eat 1 suda? Kedei achilas pras. That's always the shir we have in Chazal all the time. Kedei achilas pras. What's pras? A half kikar. So according to both of the opinions, Rav Yechanan and Breuker and Rab Shimon, whatever their shir was, b'negei to the full kikar, over here, it's going to be a half a kikar for the bayis hamenuga. Which means, before when it came to Eirov, Rab Shimon said that 2/3 of a kikar is 2 sudas. 1/3 of a kikar is 1 suda. That's a kula. He was mekel by Erev Tchumen. But by bayis hamenuga, which is a din tumim and atayra, it's not a third. It's not a third of a kikar, which is 1 suda. A half a kikar is 1 suda. Kedei achilas pras is a half a kikar. So that's really the full shir, even according to Rab Shimon. A half a kikar. B'chetzi chetzia, half of a half. In other words, a quarter of the kikar. Liv soil is a gvia, to make a person tamei if you eat food that's tamei. Min atayra, the halacha is if you touch food, does not make a person tamei. Food can make other food tamei. It doesn't make a person tamei. But there's a takanim d'Rabbanan that if you eat food which is tamei, you become tamei. And what's the shir of food that makes you tamei? A half of a pras, which is a half of a half, a quarter. A quarter of a kikar, if you eat it, that's what makes you tamei. That's the shir.
So it's really machmir because the shir is a little bit greater than Eiruvin.
Where? Over here by
bayis hamenuga and liv soil sakvia. So the shir is greater.
It's bigger. And a
It
chanami.
needs to become tamei takes longer.
Yeah, okay, over here by bayis hamenuga. By Erev Tchumen, it's a kula. This is the real shir. Minatayra, the kedei achilas pras, that's the shir of 1 suda. By Erev Tchumen, he was makel to say that even 1/3 of it is also 1 suda. So 2/3 is 2 sudas.
So you need a bigger shir to get tamei. That means you're being makel, that you don't become tamei so fast.
Okay.
Huh?
Yeah, I hear you. So it's fakert over here. When chatzi gvia, it's a pretty small share. A quarter of a kikar will make
a whole kikar.
a
Not
quarter.
the shir of Eiruvin.
Okay, true. A quarter of a whole kikar. That's what makes a person tamei when he eats it.
The chatzi on the base of nuga is bigger than the shir.
Yes.
Of chatzi.
Yeah.
So it's harder to bigger. So you don't.
Yeah, we're talking about Erev Tchumen here. We're talking about Erev Tchumen here. Huh?
Chatzi on the base of nuga is a bigger shir than the shir.
According to Rab Shimon, it's a bigger share, not according to Rab Yechanan ben Breuker.
So it's a cooler because you don't become tamei so fast.
Okay. So the Gemara, v'kame mazayin shtei sudas. What's the shir of mazayin for 2 sudas? Amar Rav Yudah Amar Rav. So the Mishnah said the shir of 2 sudas for Shabbos, 2 sudas for the weekday, but it didn't say what the shir is. So Amar Rav Yudah Amar Rav, tarti rifti achriyasa. The 2 breads of a farmer. I guess in those times they knew exactly what that size is because we have no idea what this is. But 2 breads of a farmer. Rav Ada bar Ava Amar, tarti rifti nahar papyaisa. The 2 breads of the city Nahar Papa. Okay, so I think over here Taisus says that maybe it's Taisus before. If you remember, we had before in a Gemara when you get to 2 sudas that the shir is 18 gris, 18 greigeris. I meant to say. So l'chayre, that's the shir that the Gemara is talking about over here. 18 greigeris. That was a whole different shir that we had before mentioned once in the Gemara. And l'chayre, that's the shir here according to Rab Meir and Rab Yehuda.
How do you make the cheshbon?
No, I don't.
Make the cheshbon that those 2 are match.
No, we don't know. We don't know what.
That
This is probably what it is. This was the share then of a farmer or of the city Nahar Papa, but we don't know what their share was. In those times, they knew. Let Rav Yosef berei de Rabbe, the Bach is Goyres Rabbe. So Rav Yosef said to Rav Yosef, the son of Rabbe, Avuch keman svirele. Who does your father hold like? In other words, the machlekes of Rav Meir and Rav Yehuda regarding Shabbos, the shir of Shabbos or the shir of weekday, what's a larger share? In other words, he wanted to know, does your father eat more on Shabbos or does he eat more on the weekday? That's basically what he's asking him. So he answered him, Rab Meir. He holds like Rab Meir. In other words, Rab Meir said that on Shabbos a person eats more. So Rav Yosef said, I also agree with Rab Meir that on Shabbos a person eats more. If you're going to say like Rabbi Yehuda that says that because there's 3 sudas on Shabbos, so on a weekday a person eats more, Kashi had amri inchi, so it'll be a question of the statement that people say, Ravche lebesim meshchiach. The space for a geschmack of food, you're always going to find space. This is the Maimer Olam. And therefore, you see from this that on Shabbos, when there's more geschmack of foods, a person eats more.
Even though there is more meal.
Even though there's another meal, and that, it says the famous Lashon Shulchan Aruch HaChachamein of Bereishai that shouldn't eat too much. But nevertheless, the Teva Olam is Ravche lebesim meshchiach. For something that's tasty, you have space for it, and therefore people eat more on Shabbos. So we had the Machlokes here in the Mishnah between Rabbi Yechanan ben Broike and Rab Shimon. Sagt the Gemara, Tana, we learned in the Braise, Ukroivim devreyem liyos shavim. Their shittas are close to each other. They're equal. They're very close. Fragt the Gemara, how could you say they're very close? Mi dami, are they b'chlal similar? The Rabbi Yechanan arba sudas lekaba. According to Rabbi Yechanan, it's going to come out that there's 4 sudas for a kav. Because when we learned the Mishnah, okay, what did we say in the Mishnah? That for a quarter of a kav is 1 suda. A half a kav is 2 sudas. A full kav is 4 sudas. Poshet, yeah, that was Rabbi Yechanan's shitta. And Rab Shimon, Teisha sudas al kav. Rab Shimon said 1 suda was a 1/9 of a kav. So 9 sudas in a kav. So it's a very big difference between them. Rav Chiste says, Tzei mehen shlish lechanvini. This shear that the Mishnah said that we're talking about 4 saw of flour that you could buy for a selah, so you have to take off. That's the price that a storekeeper or a baker, when he buys the flour, that's the price that he pays for the flour.
That's what he sells it.
Right, but then he wants to make a profit. So if he wants to make a profit, he's not selling it to you for that amount. He takes off a part of the flour for himself, and he sells you less. So therefore, he says you have to take off a shlish. Same man shlish lechanvini. Okay, so now if you're taking off from a half a kav, a shlish, how much is 2/3 of a half a kav? 2/3 of a half a kav is 1/3 of a kav. So 1/3 of a kav, that's what it is. 2/3 of half is 1/3 of a kav. So 1/3 of a kav is going to be 2 sudas. What's 1 suda? 1/6 of a kav. That means that according to Rabbi Yechanan, every kav has 6 sudas in it.
Share is almost double.
So so according to Rabbi Yechanan, every kav has 6 sudas, and according to Rabbi Shimon, 9. So the Gemara asks, it's still not so close. Fragt the Gemara.
You also have to take up.
Huh? What? No. He's saying according to Rabbi Yechanan. The shear that Rabbi Yechanan said, not Rabbi Shimon didn't say this shear b'chlal. Rabbi Shimon wasn't talking about the price. Rabbi Shimon just said 2/3 of a. This is only according to Rabbi Yechanan that we take off. Okay, fragt the Gemara, v'akati lemar tisha. According to Rab Shimon, it's still going to be 9 sudas in a kav, lemar shit, and according to Rab Yechon, it's going to be 6 sudas in a kav. So the Gemara, elo ki'idoch to Rav Chiste. There's another statement that Rav Chiste himself said. The Omar, what did Rav Chiste say? Tzei mehen mechze lechanvini. You actually have to take off from the half a kav. You have to take off half of that. In other words, a quarter of a kav is 2 sudas. Quarter of a kav is 2 sudas. So how much is 1 suda? Half of that. 1/8 of a kav is 1 suda. So if 1/8 of a kav is 1 suda, a kav has 8 sudas. Fragt the Gemara, so they're still not the same. Wait, the Gemara is going to ask that question. Fragt the Gemara, va'akati lemar teisha ulemar tmani. But first the Gemara asks, that according to Rav Shimon, it's 9 sudas in a kav, and according to Rav Yechanan, it's 8 sudas in a kav.
But they're arguing.
Huh?
They argue.
No,
Yeah.
he said kroivim divrei.
Right.
Divrei, but they argue, so it's close.
Oh, and for the Gemara, hainu de ka'amar kroivim devreim liyis shavin. That's why it says kroivim. We started off thinking that Rav Yechanan says that there's 4 sudas in a kav, and he says 9 sudas in a kav. That's very far. Now we're showing you that no, that it's really the only difference between them is one suda, right? 8 or 9 sudas in a kav. So therefore they're called kreivim devreim. Now the Gemara asks the question. Rav Chisda said 2 different things. Kasha, the Rav Chisda, the profit margin of the chenveni. How much does he take off for himself? Does he take off a third for himself, or does he take off half for himself? And for the Gemara, loy kasha. The kiyav balabayis tzivi. If the balabayis gives wood for the oven, so then he takes off. So then his profit is more because he doesn't have to pay for the wood. The balabais is paying for the wood, so he doesn't have to pay for the wood. So he doesn't have to take off so much. He only takes off a third. You're paying for the wood. The balabais is paying for the wood. The loya of balabais CV. If the balabais is not paying for the wood for the oven, so the baker has to pay for the wood. So he takes off more. He raises the price. So then it's going to come out like the second Rav Chisda that said that he takes off half. Okay. So the Gemara weiter in the Mishnah, then it said chetzia, half of this shear lebayis hamenuga, and then chetzia, a quarter lifsalus agvia, to make a person tamei if he eats it. As I mentioned, that was a takon of Chazal. You become tummy when you eat something which is tummy.
And when it says chetzia, we established that means from the whole kicker.
Yeah.
Not the shear from Eiruvin, the way he divided it.
No, half of the whole kicker. Correct. Sagt the Gemara, Tane, we learned in Abraise, chetzia, half of half, which is an eighth. An eighth of a kikar, letame tumas eichlin. That's the shear for tumas eichlin. How much is an eighth of an eighth of an eighth? So we're going to convert it into beitzim. Let's convert everything we're talking about over here into beitzim. How many beitzim are there in a kav? There are 24 beitzim in a kav, as Rashi brings over here. Okay, so if you have 24 beitzim in a kav, so what's a quarter of a kav? According to Rabbi Yechanan, what was the maskan of the Gemara just now? What's 2 sudas? What's a whole kikar? A whole kikar is a quarter of a kav, right? That was the maskan that we said before, because the baker takes off a half for himself. So the maskan of the Gemara was that a whole kikar is a quarter of a kav. So if a whole kikar is a quarter of a kav, and every kav has 24 beitzim, so in a quarter of a kav you have 6 beitzim. Half of that is going to be 3 beitzim. A quarter of that is going to be a beitza and a half. And then for tumas eichlin, it's going to be 3 quarters of a beitza. 3 quarters of a beitza. I'm reading the Rashi. I'm going through the Rashi over here. Rab Shimon, according to Rab Shimon, if you convert this into beitzim, it's going to be more, because Rab Shimon had a bigger shear. What was Rab Shimon's shear? Rab Shimon's shear was that what's a full kav? 3 kickers is a whole kav. Each kicker is only a third of a kav. Okay, again, each kicker is a third of a kav. So if each kav is 24 beitzim, how much is a third of a kav? 8. 8 times 3 is 24. So you're going to have 8 beitzim in a third of a kicker. And then half of that is going to be 4. Half of that is going to be 2. And that's the shear, which is going to be very important for the next brayso that we're learning here. 2 beitzim. 2 beitzim is a chatzi pras. A pras, a full, according to Rab Shimon, a full kikar is 8 beitzim. A pras, the shear of achilas pras, is 4 beitzim. A half a pras is 2 beitzim. Half of that is going to be 1 beitza. And that's what we just said here. Tumas eichlin. Chetzia is chetzi. No, it's beitza. It's 1 beitza.
No, Shimon has to be a half than Rabbi Yechanan.
No. Rab Shimon is more. Rab Shimon is a bigger shear. I'm reading Rashi. Look at the last.
Shear bekikar megimel kav. Kikar shleimer chetz beitzim.
Yeah. Chetzia is beis. Chetzia. That's how you read. Chetzia beitza. Is 1 beitza. So when the Gemara, the top line that we just read, the chetzi latame tumas eichlin, so what's that shear? If you convert it into eggs, it comes out to be 1 beitza. Okay? Frag the Gemara, the Tana Didon, the Tana of our Mishnah, my time leitani tumas eichlin. Why didn't he say this as well? If he says half for the bayis hamanuga, half of that, which is a quarter for the plifslos agvi, why didn't he go to the next thing, which is an eighth of that, which is a beitza? Why didn't he mention that? So the Gemara, the reason is because if you're going to measure this shear of this one beitza, we'll see soon in a braisa, it's not exact. It's not going to be exactly one beitza, half of a half of a half. So therefore, the Mishnah is only bringing things that are exact, and this is not going to be exact, as we'll see. Tanya, so first the Gemara brings a braisa where it talks about the shear to be metama a person when he eats it. The shear of chatzi pras. How much is the shear of chatzi pras? Kama shear chatzi pras. Beis beitzim, the shear of chatzi pras is 2 beitzim, but it's chaser kima, missing a little bit. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. So how did we get to beis beitzim? So we had the cheshbon before. This is going according to the shita of Rab Shimon. According to Rab Shimon, a full kikar is 8 beitzim. Half of that is 4 beitzim. Half of that, which is the chatzi pras, is 2 beitzim.
Why is chaser kima?
Huh?
Why is chaser?
Chaser kima is because according to Rabbi Yehuda, on the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, the beitzim was smaller. And the time of the Tanaim, the beitzim were bigger. No, before you get to Yerushalmis, that's a different Indian. Pashut, the size of the beitzim. His shitting is that in the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, the beitzim were bigger, and the beitzim were then was smaller. That is, in the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, the beitzim was smaller, and the time of the Tanaim, the beitzim became larger. So you have to take off a little bit because they became larger. That's Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yosi Omer, the exact opposite. Beis beitzim, it's taka the shear according to Rab Shimon is 2 beitzim, but seichakais has to be a little bit larger beitzim. Why? Because he held the opposite, that in time of Moshe Rabbeinu, the beitzim were bigger, and now they became smaller. Okay? So interessante machlekes b'metzias. Did the beitzim become bigger or smaller? No. Shir Rebbe beis beitzim. Rebbe measured, he had a certain measurement, that he had a Kabbalah, that this is the shear, and he said that it's 2 beitzim, v'oid. And you have to add a little bit more. In other words, Rebbe held that our beitzim became smaller, so you have to add a little bit more. Okay, similar to what Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yosi said. But the Gemara says, Kama v'oid, how much more do you have to add according to Rebbe? Echad me esrim bebeitza. It's 2 beitzim plus another 20th of a beitza for each beitza. Okay, that's how much you have to add. So, this is the shear of chatzi pras for livsoilis agviyah. Now, when it comes to half of that, so half of that, l'chayre should be 1 beitza. Or 1 beitza chasakim, or 1 beitza maybe more. It has to be half of what we just said. But what does it say in a braisa regarding tumas eichlin? Tanya, it says in a braisa, Rab Nosson, Rab Daisa amru, ke beitza she'amru, the shear of a beitza for the tumas eichlin, kamaya ukeklipasa. It has to be the beitza and the klippe. So that doesn't go, that's not exactly half of what we said before. Because what we said before is it has to either be a little bit less than an egg or a little bit more than an egg. But over here, this is a beitza and a klippe. So it doesn't fit. It's not exactly half of anything that we said before. The Chachamim say, kamaya b'loi klipasa. The shear of tumas eichlin is an egg without a klippe. It also is not exactly half of anything that we said before. So because by tumas eichlin, the shear of a beitza is not exactly half of the chatzi pras, you can't say it's a chatzi pras because it's a little bit more or less, because it's either with the shell or without the shell. It's not exactly half of before, so therefore the Mishnah doesn't mention this. That's what the Gemara meant before when it said it's not shov shir ra'ila dodi. It's not exactly half of the previous year. Sagt the Gemara weiter, Amar from Papa, Amar Rav Chisda. Zu divrei Rabbi Yehuda v'Rabbi Yosi. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yosi, that's the shear that they said, which is that the shear of a chatzi pras is 2 beitzim. Ava chachamim oimrem, the chachamim say, what's the shear of a chatzi pras? Ke beitza umechza seichakais. The shear is a beitza and a half seichakais. Uman chachamim, who's this chachamim? Rabbi Yechanan ben Breike. The chachamim is Rabbi Yechanan ben Breike. Why is the chachamim Rabbi Yechanan ben Breike? So we had the cheshbon before in Rashi. Because
Before we had
according to Rab Shimon. Now it's the chachamim is Rabbi Yechanan ben Breike. What did Rabbi Yechanan ben Breike hold? Every kikar is a quarter of a kav, which is 4 beitzim. So if a whole kikar is 4 beitzim, half of that is 3 beitzim, and then half of that is a beitza and a half. That's exactly Rabbi Yechanan ben Breike's shitta. I said 4, I meant 6 beitzim. No. So 6 beitzim. 6 beitzim is a full kikar. Half of that is 3, and half of that is 1.5. So that's the chatzi pras, half of half, a quarter. That's going to be a beitza and a half. Okay, so this is Rabbi Yechanan ben Breike. Sagt the Gemara pshita. It's obvious. If you make the cheshbon, this is what it comes out. What's Rav Chisda being machadash over here? And the Rashi adds, Rav Chisda himself was the one that spoke about this before. When he spoke about the whole thing that the baker takes off. Yeah, Rav Chisda himself explained this already before. If you make the cheshbon, it comes out this way. What was Rav Chisda being machadash now? And for the Gemara, Seicha Kais Asa Lashmina. The only chiddush over here is the addition that he said of Seicha Kais. That Rabbi Yochanan ben Broike will also hold that there has to be a little larger eggs, big eggs, because the eggs today became smaller. Okay, now we move on to a little bit of a different inyan. Also, there's more numbers to deal with over here, so don't get hot nach kap. Sagt the Gemara weiter, ki aser Rav Dimi came, Omar, he said, Shigir Bunyas Lerebi, Bunyas, a fellow by the name of Bunyas, sent to Rebbe, Mudye de Kundis, a measurement of a Kundis. Kundis is a sa'ah, the min Na'usa, that he got from a place called Na'usa. And Veshir Rebbe, and Rebbe measured this sa'ah, and how much was this sa'ah? Masan Vesheva Esren Bein, 217 eggs. Shear of 217 baits. Okay, so let's make the cheshbon over here before we go weiter in the Gemara. So let's make the cheshbon over here. How many kav are there in a sa'ah?
6.
There are 6 kav in a sa'ah. Okay, so if there's and every kav is how much? 24 baitzim. Okay, so what's 4 times? Not 4 times. Sorry, 6 times 24. Every sa'ah is 6 kav. So what's 6 times 24 baitzim? 144, exactly. So the shear should be 144. But here he came to 217. So that's what the Gemara is going to discuss now. How do we come to 217? So what the Gemara is going to bring over here is that the MS, when it comes to a sa'ah, there's 3 shiurim of a sa'ah. There's the original shear that we just spoke about, which is 144. But then there's a shear Yerushalmis, where they added a 5th to that. A 5th. The Gemara is soon going to call it a 6th, but it's really a shismilabat. I'll explain it soon. But they added a 5th. So if you add a 5th to 144, what's a 5th of 144? It's 29. It's be'erech 29. I think it's like a 4/5. It's a 5th less than 29. It's be'erech 29. You add 29 to 144, so you'll get to 173. And then there's a 3rd shear of a saw, which is adding another 5th to that. What's a 5th of 173? That's going to be another 34 about. Be'erech 34. So that's going to get you to 207. You still don't get to 217 baitzim. So what kind of a sa'ah did he have, which was 217 baitzim? So let's see it now in the Gemara inside. It's like the Gemara, so ha sa'ah de heiche. This sa'ah that Rebbe had such a large measurement, from where is this? The midbaris. If this is the original sa'ah from the midbar, in the time of the midbar, when you didn't want the midbar, kufmem dalar havya. So that's 144 baitzim. If it's when they added another 5th to that, so then it's Kufain Gimel, 173 Havya. Vide Tzipairis, if when they added another 5th to that, Reizayin Havya. So then it's 207. So how do we get to 217? And for the Gemara, La'olam the Tzipairis. The shear of the sa'ah that Rebbe was using is the sa'ah of Tzipairi. I see Chalsa Shada Alayhu. Add the shear of Chala. If you add to this 207 the shear of challah that you remove, so if you add to it the shear of challah, you'll come to 217. So now the Gemara is going to make the cheshbon.
What do you mean you added a shear of challah? Shear of challah is part of the bread.
And a chanami, true. So over here, he's saying, so the saw is 207. So Rebbe's saw was also 207. This measurement of the saw that this person brought him was 207 plus the shear of challah. Add to it the shear of challah.
Why are you adding the shear of challah?
Because
and then you take from those.
Okay, so when you take off the challah, so then you're going to be left with 207. But he had the shear before you take off the challah, so therefore it's going to be more than 207. Huh?
So is a certain measurement.
Mm-hmm.
From that sa'ah you take off challah, so it should be less.
No. You take off challah from however large your challah is.
Oh, you mean that was the metzias?
Yeah. He had a larger amount. Well, after you take off the challah, you'll get 207. So therefore, add to this the shear of challah. So now the Gemara is going to say, wait a minute, what's the shear of challah? How much is the shear of challah? We had this not long ago. We learned here in the Gemara that a nachtoim takes a 48th and a balabais takes a 24th. So you have to take off a 24th of how much? Of 207. How much is a 24th of 207? It's about 8. 8 plus a little bit. 8 point something. So you have to. So we're talking about adding to 207 8. Fragt the Gemara, Chalsa Kamavien Tamani. It's going to be add another 8. Akata Batzale. It's still less than 217. It's only 215. And says the Gemara, no, you're right. So the cheshbon is something else. You have to add a 20th, not a 24th for the challah. Forget about the challah. Add a 20th. Why do you have a 20th? Ela aisi ve'oidois de Rebbe. And show the lie. What did the Rebbe say before? That the beitzim became smaller. For every beitzah, you have to add another 20th of a beitzah. So for 200 beitzim, you're adding how many beitzim? Another 10 beitzim, right? 20th of 200 beitzim is another 10 beitzim. So for 207 beitzim, so you're adding another 10 beitzim point something.
Is that what the share is? Taka comes out if you have the void?
Yeah. That's what it comes out. A 20th for every beitzah. The Gemara said before it's a 20th. A 20th for every beitzah. So therefore over here it comes out to be 217 plus a little bit more. It's still going to be more than 217. It's not going to be exactly 217 because a 20th of 207 is you're adding more than 10 beitzim. And says the Gemara, that additional amount, which is not a full beitzah, that he didn't mention. He didn't mention. But really, it comes out to be 217 if you add the additional 20th that Rebbe mentioned. Now the Gemara comes back to these 3 shiurim of the Sa'ah that we mentioned over here. Tana Rabbanan, we learned in Abraisa, Sa Yerushalmis, Yisei Al Midbaris Shtus. A Sa Yerushalmis is more than a Midbaris, a sixth. So as Rashi explains, it's a Shtus Mulabar. What means Shtus Mulabar? Shtus Mulabar means, which is a fifth. For example, 100. What's a fifth of a...
Why did the shiurim get bigger?
For some reason they made it bigger, I'm not sure. But they changed the shear of a saw. Over time, they decided to change so we had before a similar thing. L'mashal benegeta amma is an amma of 5 tvachim, of 6 tvachim. There were different kinds of ammas and different things. There got be kachim. So the saw, they changed the shear of the saw. So when you get to the concept of a shtos, so let's say you have 100. What's a fifth of 100? 20, right? But a 20 is also going to be a shtus malabar, meaning after the full sum, 120, so a sixth of 120 is 20. So if you're talking about what's the ratio before you add the full sum of another 20, so then it's a fifth. But after you add that 20, that's called malabar. After you add that other 20, that 20 is going to be a sixth of 120. So over here, when it says a sixth, it really means what we usually call a fifth. Okay. So it's a fifth more. V'shal tzipaitis, Yisei Al Yerushalmis Shtus. And tzipaitis was also, they added a 6 malabar more as well. Now, the Braisa concludes, Nimtzis shal tzipaitis, Yisei Al Midbaris. The shear of a sa'ah tzipaitis is going to be more than the midbaris, which was the first shear. How much? A shlish. It's going to be a shlish more. Okay, so now you have to remember the numbers that we had before in order to understand the Hamshach of the Gemara. What did we have before? A midbaris is 144. A Yerushalmis is 173. A Tzipaitis is 207. Okay, so it's very simple numbers here. Let's see. Shlish deman. When you're saying that the Tzipaitis is a third more than the midbaris, a third of what? Shlish de midbaris. If you're going to say that a third of 144, that's how much the Tzipaitis is more than the midbaris. It's not true. Mechdi, shlish, the midbaris. What's a third of 144? Kamahavi, arban v'tmanya. That's 48. V'ilu, oitfosh, the amount that a tzipaitis, which is 207, is more than the midbaris, which is 144, shit in the class. That's 63 more. 63 beitzim more, not 48.
So it's more than a third.
Yeah, so it's more than that third. The Ella shlish the Yerushalmis. When the Braisa said that it's a third more, what did it mean? A shlish of the Yerushalmis.
From where? From the Tzipairis to the Yerushalmis?
From the Tzipairis to the Midbaris, the amount that it's more over the Midbaris is the same amount as a shlish of the Yerushalmis. What is the shlish of the Yerushalmis? The Ella shlish the Yerushalmis. It's the same amount as the shlish of the Yerushalmis. What is that? Shlish tida kamahave. What's the shlish of the Yerushalmis, which is 173? Chamshin v'tmanya nakit lasa tilsa. It's 58 minus a third. Okay, so v'ilu oitva. And how much is the tzipaitis more than the midbaris? Shittin it last, like we just said, 63 more. The Ella the tzipaitis. So what are you going to tell me that when we say that the tzipaitis is more than the midbaris? 63, a shlish, which is 63. It is more 63 it's a shlish of what? It's the same amount as the shlish of the tzipairi. What's a shlish of the tzipairi? Shlish dida kama have. What's the shlish of a tzipairi? 207. What's the shlish of 207? Zok the Gemara. Shivin naki chode. 69. V'ilu oitva samach gimel. It's only 63 more. Right? The shlish of the tzipairi is 69, and the shlish of the tzipairi, how much more is it than the midbaris? 63. Elam Rabbi Yirmiyah. So Rabbi Yirmiyah says, Hachi Kama. Ataka doesn't stim exactly, but this is what it meant to say. Nimtzis, saw, shal tzipairi, the saw of the tzipairi is going to be Yisera al midbaris, more than the midbaris. How much? 63. Karayv l'shlish shalah. It's close to the number of its third. What's a third of the tzipairi? 69. So 63 is close enough to 69. And another thing he adds now, v'shlish shalah, a third of the tzipairi, which is 69, is karayv l'mechza the midbaris, is very close to half of a midbaris. What's half of a midbaris? If a midbaris is 144, half of a midbaris is 72. So the number 69, which is a third of the tzipairis, is very close to a half of the midbaris. I don't know, it's like interesting, because it didn't say this in the Braisa.
You coming to explain the Braisa?
Yeah, Nachanami. I'm not sure why he added this. It's a good question. Maybe I didn't see a hesba for this. It could be it says, I didn't see. Sagt the Gemara weiter, Maske Fla Ravina asked him a question. Midi, Karev, Katani. Does it say in the Braisa that it's close to it? It doesn't say close. Your cheshbon comes out that it's not the same. The Braisa was saying that the difference between the tzipairis and the midbaris is like the shlish of the tzipairis. According to you, this is 63, this is 69, it's only close. Yeah, so it's not close. So Ella, Omer Ravina, Hachi Kama. Ravina says a different cheshbon. Nim says shlish shal tzipairi, the shlish of a tzipairi, b'va'oidiyos shal Rebbe. If you add the oidiyos of Rebbe, so then it's going to come out Yiseire al mechze shal midbaris shlish ubeitze. Okay, so the cheshbon over here is second. The cheshbon over here. So we're talking over here about a shlish of a tzipairi, not 69, because now we have to add the oidiyos of Rebbe. If you add the oidiyos of Rebbe, which is a 20th for all the beitzim, how much does it come out? It comes out to be 72 and a third beitzah. 72 and a third. Okay? So 72 and a third is going to be a little bit more than what? Than half of a midbaris. What was the half of a midbaris? A full midbaris is 144. What's half of that? 72. And this, if you add the oidiyos of Rebbe, comes out to be a 72 and a third. So it's very, very close. It's only a third off. It meant a half of the midbaris. It meant a half of the midbaris. And when it said in the Braisa, the word shlish, nimtzis shal tzipairis, you said midbaris shlish, it was referring to this difference between them shlish. That there's a shlish of a difference between them when you compare these measurements. Okay, Zok the Gemara weiter, Tan Rabbanon. One more cheshbon here. Reishis arisei seichem. You take challah, reishis arisei seichem. Kidei isei seichem. How much challah do you take? As much dough as you have, so you have to take off from it. And v'kama.
What's the concept of the word kidei isei?
Reishis arisei seichem means that the shear of challah is kidei isei seichem. You have to have a isa. In order to be chayav, there's no shear. In other words, there's no shear of how much challah you take off. At least in our Torah there isn't. But you have to have a isa, a shear of a isa. That you do have to have. There's a minimum shear of how large the isa itself has to be chayav in challah. Kidei isei seichem. You have to have a isa. Now the Gemara is going to say what that is. The kama isei seichem. What is the isa? Kidei isa samidbar, as large as the mon, the isa, the dough that you eat out in the midbar. The kama isa samidbar. How big is the dough in the midbar? The chsib, the pasuk says, v'ha'oime asiris ha'efa hu. That the oime is a tenth of an ephah. Okay, so what's an ephah? How much is an ephah? An ephah is, Rashi says, an ephah is 3 saw. And every saw is 6 kavin. And every kav is 4 lugin. Okay, so it comes out, if you times that, 3 times 6 times 4, it comes out to be 72 lug. So what's a tenth of that? A tenth of that is going to be, a tenth of that is, what's a tenth of 72 lug? A tenth of 72 lug is going to be 70 and a fifth. That's what the Gemara says now. Mikan Amru Shiva Revoyim, that the Asidis Eifa is 7 quarters. When the Gemara uses the term quarters, that's a lug. A lug is a quarter of a kav, so therefore the Gemara uses the Lashon Revoyim. Okay, so again, the full Eifa is going to be 72 lug. A tenth of that is going to be a 7 and a fifth. So therefore we say that it's Shiva Revoyim Shal Kav. It's Shiva Revoyim. Okay, Shiva Revoyim Kamach. Sorry, again. Shiva Revoyim Kamach. It's 7 Revoyim, which is a lug, as I mentioned, V'oid. And a little bit more, as I mentioned, another fifth. Chayev is Mechala, that's what's going to be Chayev Mechala. Now, Sheheim Vav Shal Yerushalmis, it comes out to be six of the shear of Yerushalmis, because the Yerushalmis, the shear of is bigger, as we said before, right? They added another 6th Malabar to the shear of the lug. Shehein Chamisha Shal Tzipairi, which is going to be 5 of Tzipairi, because the Tzipairi they added another 6 Malabar. From here they said, someone that eats this amount, which is the amount that Yechayev and Chala, the amount that they had from one in the midbar, Harei body. If this is the amount you eat every day, you're healthy. And you're benched. Yasser came, if you eat more than this, Rafsen. So then you're eating like a person that's eating too much. If you can't eat this amount, if you're eating less than this in a day, so then that means you have an issue with your stomach that you can't eat this amount of food.
What is the shear that comes out in today's?
The shear of challah, I think it's I don't think people eat that much today.
It's like,
no, I think something like that. I don't remember the exact amount, but it's 5 pounds. If you make challah 5 pounds, the mashal, you get like 5 mid-sized challahs. So to eat for one day,
that's a lot. That's a half also.
Maybe if you're eating just that without anything else, no side dishes, nothing else, that's the amount for one day. Okay, we're going to stop here for today. Im Hashem will continue tomorrow. Okay.
It wasn't so bad.
Paid dollar is shorter than that.
It wasn't so bad.
It was great. Bad.
No. As long as you said it was better. I didn't have to throw the numbers, so it was...
He asked, because the Ein Bora Madu Hasiv, the Vienna Yachid eventually, so